Joining us now in studio is Commissioner George P. Bush. Thank you so much for making time to come into the studio today. I appreciate you.
Great to be with you.
Let's talk about one of the most pressing issues of the day, certainly for us here in our community, which is COVID-19. We're a community that's been hit very hard by that. And in a lot of places in our state, the person who you are running against for this position is prosecuting these school districts who have decided to allow for mask mandates and for those kind of things. What is your take on, first of all, the COVID pandemic and what the Justice Department's role is in that?
So thank you again for having me. And the Attorney General position would defend the governor's executive order. And in this case is truly about the Texas Disaster Act and what authorities the governor has during times of crisis. And the rub in the law in the state of Texas is what authorities do a city, or in this case ISDs, have, and the governor. And I'm a firm believer, since we have a part-time citizen legislature, that the governor should have an unequivocal voice when it comes to responding to COVID. Now, I am running for the chief litigator position for Texas, but I'm also common sense and practical. And before engaging in lawsuits, I would want to reach out to ISD officials to work on a voluntary program by which parents have more decision making rather than bureaucrats and school departments. And so as a parent of two, myself at 8 and 6 years old, I'd speak with parents throughout the state of Texas on this issue. I think we all understand that we need to mitigate the spread of COVID, but the emotional learning aspect of what we're doing with our children, with potential for vaccine mandates and mask mandates, is problematic, and that has to be balanced in this discussion. But this suit makes it sound like it's against ISDs, when really it's about the authorities of the governor of the state of Texas to make the position to not only contain the spread of COVID, but do something that's sensible for parents throughout Texas.
There's an interesting conversation that surrounds the Attorney General job of finding the limits of the law and finding where those boundaries are and how it can best serve the citizens of the state. It sounds like that's how you would approach this position if voters elect you to it. What is your understanding of this job, and why do you want to be the Attorney General?
So I want to be the Attorney General because I believe we need a top cop that's not under criminal indictment or under FBI investigation, which our current occupant is. I'm running because I think we need to back our thin blue line in Texas. We've seen a defund the police movement make its way to areas where I live, like in Austin, where we see a low rate of morale, low rate of retention, and homicides now at an all-time high, and we're just in the month of September. We need to do a better job securing the border. I am the son of a legal immigrant. I think we need to uphold and cherish the process by which people come to our country legally. But what we're seeing on our southern border is not only a surge of illegal immigration, but death, destruction, and the cartels profiting with $14 million a day. We need to take on human trafficking in our state. This is the fastest growing crime in the state of Texas, and the current occupant has convicted approximately 0 human traffickers in the last decade. Young Texas women shouldn't be for sale. And finally, it's about restoring integrity to the top law enforcement position in Texas, recruiting new talent and new attorneys from around the country and the state to Austin to fight for champion causes greater than self. And so I'm going to be traveling the state, including in Amarillo, talking with constituents about why I'm the most qualified for the job.
I want to ask you about the border. I appreciate that you brought that up. I think that that's something that is on top of mind for our viewers, your voters, here in the Panhandle. As we, so much of our economy depends on migrant work, and we're very closely linked. As far away from the border as we are closely linked to what's going on there. And I think a lot of people are seeing the crisis there and forming opinions and wondering what is next. So I want to ask you about the role that the judiciary can play in informing our response to that, because we have so many people who are under arrest for criminal trespass, that are being held in our border prisons now, and we have so many county attorneys from those areas of our state who are saying we have 6 and 12 and 20 of us trying to work on all of these cases. How do you envision that this office changes in the response to how we make sure that those people all get due process?
Well, regretfully, the current Attorney General has a broken relationship with our state legislature, so he is in no position to backstop the local and county DAs that you're referring to that are totally overwhelmed with human trafficking cases, trespassing cases, narcotics cases, you name it, in which we are interdicting and doing what we can on the southern border, since the federal government is largely not doing their job. Having said that, the Border Patrol have been absolutely heroic. And I was the first in my campaign, in my field of candidates, to defend our Border Patrol agents. For those of us, especially in Texas, we know all about mounted patrols, and we know about split reins. And this president in the White House was irresponsible to call out those honorable and officials that were entrusted by our country to enforce our federal immigration laws. Now, a state court has weighed in on the issue of whether or not we can detain before charging in either a local court. Since the state attorney general does not possess that authority to backstop, one of the things I'm campaigning on is to say that the legislature needs to entrust a new AG, and that would be me, that can restore integrity and backstop local DAs to fill in the gap, whether it's capital crime, human trafficking, to fill in the gap, because local DAs not only are overwhelmed, but we're seeing in urban Texas, they're politicizing narcotics cases and refusing to follow through, and actually more willing to prosecute police officers than they are criminal defendants. And that viewpoint needs to change in Texas, and it starts in the border and what we're seeing on the judicial side of the equation.
Let's talk a little bit about your current job as land commissioner, and obviously oil and gas is a huge industry here in the Panhandle. But as we recognize the encroaching threat of climate change, we know that industry has to continue to evolve in that way. In your current position, that obviously gives you experience, and probably part of the reason why you're running for Attorney General, because you've had so much experience with this. But in your current position, how do you imagine that the oil and gas industry should evolve? What are some of the steps that you see that taking in the next 5 to 10 years to combat climate change and create good sustaining jobs for folks here in the Panhandle?
Well, as land commissioner, I was the first in the role to announce methane emission goals on the state portfolio. The land office manages 13 million acres on behalf of the school children of Texas, and most of the royalties we generate are from oil and gas production. We've announced goals for 2030, 2040, and 2050. I'm also the first land commissioner to sign the Clear Skies initiative to work with the oil and gas industry to work on lighting, particularly in areas like Presidio County, where we have a national observatory there, and to deal with landowners and ranchers that deal with lighting effects that occurs in West Texas. So I'm all for being practical. I believe that the industry has been innovative. We're already seeing on state lands ideas such as new battery storage technology, capturing methane to convert to hydrogen that can be used as a new source of energy. We've signed a large-scale wind farm deal down in Rio Grande City and Starr County, and then also solar development, particularly in the Trans-Pecos corridor, where you get over 300 days of rays to benefit the El Paso metro area. So there's a lot going on in the energy business that not a lot of Texans know about, but that we're trying to push the ball on. So I think in the next 5 and 10 years, you're going to see that Texas is not only a leader in oil and gas and continue our dominance there, but in alternatives, our infrastructure is perfectly developed to enhance and harness the natural resources that we have in our great state.
I want to ask you, my final question is for you just to kind of draw a line between you and the incumbent who you're running against. You're both conservatives, and obviously this is a very conservative district, and so voters are inclined in that way. But what is it, do you think, about you and your campaign that you think voters should get on board with?
Voters should know that I have a background in the private sector, running a business, that I was in the military, serving for 10 years with a deployment to Afghanistan, and now I've served the good state of Texas for 8 years as land commissioner. So I bring more executive experience than the current occupant. The current occupant is under securities fraud indictment, 3 felony counts, facing 99 years of sentencing. He claims his innocence, but yet he won't sit down for a jury trial. If he's innocent, why can't he just sit down in front of a jury of his peers in Collin County? And he's facing an FBI investigation. So since he's out on criminal bond, if he gets indicted for federal charges, he will return to jail for the 2nd time in his 2 terms as Attorney General. So I believe the top cop position, when I look in the eyes of police officers throughout Texas, and they see that their leader is under indictment, and if the same activities occurred under their watch, that they would be fired and their benefits let go, they know that there's a hypocrisy there. And Republicans deserve better, Texans deserve better, and that's what I'm willing to offer.
Land Commissioner George P. Bush, who is running for Texas Attorney General, thank you for your time.
Good to be with you.